Hi everyone, great to see so many friends here. I'm going to be talking about how we approach building brands seriously. Obviously, building brands is something where there's so many different ways you can approach this. There's so many ways you can build a brand that you could consider this as a case study on our approach. And in a nutshell, Best Fiends was launched October 2014, where right now we are doing better than ever. The game is growing still on the market. We're over 70 million downloads, where we just had our record revenue month, and this thing it's all becoming quite real. For us at this point, hitting 100 million downloads is just a matter of time. That's going to happen in the upcoming months, and that's super exciting. And to get there, we started with the idea of actually building a comprehensive brand, starting to, at any point, even in the first stages of development, we never thought about just making a game. We wanted to build an IP. We wanted to create a world for the Fiends. We wanted to create characters that the players can connect with. And we felt that by investing into that foundation, we can create something that we can build on for years to come. This Best Fiends never was just a game. We wanted to build a world. And that investment also meant once we had the characters, once we had the world initially drafted out, then start investing into how do we communicate that world to the players? How do we take our brand to the audience? And one thing that's been super helpful for us right from the start is having a big enough vision. We started with the idea of Best Fiends as a trilogy of 3 different games where each one builds on the foundation that the previous one has created. And on some level now, 4 years later, we're still building that same vision. That's been super helpful in keeping the company aligned towards the same direction. And if we look at the investment we're doing for the IP, the creative work, the overall the amount of work we put into all of this, it's actually probably far, far bigger than most people realize. What you see out of Best Fiends right now, today, in the game, is only a small slice of the entire world. And that means that we have materials that will cover us for the next decade, if you will, on developing this further, creating stories, building narratives, and fleshing out and developing the characters even further. And that's also something that actually requires that everyone in the company has to participate. This is something where it's super important. You really want to have everyone, starting from your customer support, starting from your marketing, everyone needs to know the brand. They need to care about the brand. It really is customer service is the first line of communication often for the players. So building that visibility inside the company is also very, very important. And here's where we started from. This is our original brand box that we shipped to some of our friends and family in October 2014. And it was a great starting point. It contained an overview of the characters. It was a great way of communicating to the industry as well, that we're building something different. But at the same point, it was definitely just the beginning. Right now, we've spent a huge amount of time building up the world of minutia, mapping out where different events and different storylines happen in that world, and building up the lore behind the characters, defining the core cast. These are the guys that you're seeing in the animation, and they're the ones that we've built narrative storylines, most in-depth narrative storylines for. And these are also characters we're constantly doing creative work like visual development on how should they look in 3D, how would Pixar treat these characters, how do we want to treat these characters. And Here's an unreleased clip from internal look development. We're going to wake Quincy up. So these are the type of things that we're just building so we can know the characters. Or with our first animations, we started defining the slugs. I mean, they're wonderful amount of opposition, but they're also basically the most worthless opponents you can imagine. So we wanted to tell their story with the animation, and started with boot camp. Let's take a look at that.
We slugs have never won, and we'll never win a war. Why? Because we're slugs, and we expect you to carry on that fine tradition.
Oh, yeah. Easy peasy. Yes!
No, don't dodge the punches, maggot. That's not how we do things.
Slug, yes, slug! Phew.
Oh, perfect!
Well, you get the idea. But ultimately, what we're doing with Best Fiends is we're building an IP that creates an almost Pokemon-like of wide character variety. Basically, we're starting to have hundreds of different looks for our Fiends. We're starting to really know these characters, and that makes it so much easier for us to communicate who they are. How do we communicate those to the audience? How do they play in different contexts? How do they react? And how do they grow up while you keep leveling them? And all this is something where the entire IP development right now, we've spent 4 years on it, and I think still on many levels we're just getting started. And especially with things like we were now introducing variety of character sets and really taking the characters to the next level. But then the other thing that we do, and actually did right from the start, we started internally talking about what does Best Fiends as a brand stand for. We've spent a lot of time defining what are the key messages that we want to send with the brand. How do we focus the messaging around those? And we do the same thing for Seriously as a brand as well. And it's super important that we have just few strong messages that we focus around. And for us, marketing certainly has been the integral way of essentially communicating the brand to the world. And right now, if we look at our annual marketing mix, about half of our spend is on performance marketing, about half of our spend is on creative marketing. And the part that's creative marketing, that's also things that directly will help us build the brand. That's super important on actually creating something that's bigger than just one game download. And most of all, now we're operating on a level where we can use content as marketing and as a brand building exercise. If you look at overall what we've done now with the first 2 short films, we've actually been able to create content that the fans enjoy and view tens of millions of times. And that also gets the brand out there and helps us market to a bigger audience. The one challenge operating in mobile space is that mobile ads really won't be that useful in brand building. Mobile ads, no matter what you do, they end up being ephemeral. They disappear once you've run the campaign. Your UA team is going to know the metrics, but it's unlikely that the audience will remember any of that. So we do a lot of performance marketing. We really like it. It's a great tool, but it should be just one tool in your overall toolbox. And the one question that we keep asking ourselves is, let's say we're investing, say, $500,000 into marketing. I would every single time rather spend that on a piece of content, on an asset that we own, that's entertaining for the audience, that remains, that actually has a lasting legacy, if you will, and that helps us build a portfolio, rather than just trigger it on performance marketing, and that's something that disappears as soon as the campaign is over. And I think that's going to be super interesting to see where the entire industry keeps going on. There's a lot of companies that are exploring the same area. One thing that's been super good for us is being able to link the animations, integrate those directly into the game, so we can actually link them back directly into a revenue stream as well. And for us, it's basically a holy grail if we can have a way of creating wonderful content with high production values for the audience that functions as marketing and that actually returns all of that production cost through a revenue stream in the game, then that's an amazing situation. A couple of other things. You need to treat your own brand like a real brand. Nobody else is going to do that, or it's very unlikely that anyone else is going to do that for you. So we do a lot of things on whether it's figuring out how do we get Best Fiends to Ellen's show, or get during the Green campaign or the Apps for Earth campaign, we run ads on Piccadilly in London, or getting some of the world's biggest influencers working with us, or even doing things like at Comic-Con, Miguel was signing posters, and he was basically, there was a long queue for people to get signed posters, and building the brand awareness through a variety of events is pretty important, and nobody else is going to do it for you. Now we're operating on a level where we're actually doing a lot of outdoor as well. So far, our outdoor campaigns, it seems to be returning at least the investment we're putting into them, and it's amazing in terms of building the brand perception. We're running campaigns in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Dallas right now. We're doing radio campaigns because we want to see how that connects, and so far the results are looking better than we expected. And we're basically putting whenever there's a marketing campaign that we can quantify, if we can do it big enough so that we can quantify it against the baseline, then we should give it a shot, try it out, and see how that works. And often those are very important brand building exercises as well. And a subject that I've talked in much more detail previously about, but we work with a lot of influencers, and we find YouTube to be a wonderful place for getting brand visibility. Most of all, if we look at the entire lifetime of Best Fiends, I think by now we have more than 500 million impressions on YouTube. Videos, Halo pieces, endorsements, variety of content, and that's definitely, at that scale, it's really starting to add up. And I think with the release of Bootcamp and Visit Minutia videos, that's also been a great experience for us stepping up the value chain and essentially being able to create content that gets the fans talking, where now for the first time we're also seeing how Best Fiends lives in a different media, and we're super happy with the initial results. So there's a lot more to come on that front later down the line. But that's about it. That's a summary of how we think about building Best Fiends up and a brand, and it's been a very exciting ride so far.
Awesome, thank you.